And that's a really important point, right? Before you take control over your job, take control over your life. I posted about burnout recently on LinkedIn, but I think burnout is real. It's not something to be ashamed of. I mean, we operate in a stressful environment. Well, that's great if you have that opportunity, but if it doesn't play to your strengths, then you're shooting yourself in the foot, right? Because it's actually going to hinder your growth rather than support that. You need to find something not just because it's a hype. You need to find something that excites you because this is really what you want to do. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today in the studio, we've got Sharon Philip. Sharon, you did my career unblocking mini course. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. I actually offered some of the people who completed the course free mentoring sessions, just to some of them who had interesting topics they wanted to discuss that we thought might be beneficial for the broader community. And Sharon had a few interesting questions to discuss. So, Sharon, why don't you just start by introducing yourself? Let us know who you are, where you're calling from, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah. All right. Hi, I'm Sharon. I'm a data analyst. I've been in the analytics area for around a little more than 10 years. I started my career in India, then worked for a bit in Singapore, and now I'm in Amsterdam. During the whole span, I have been mostly within analytics. Like the career titles changed and evolved quite a lot in the last 10 years. So it was first reporting analyst, then business analyst, then insights analyst, but now I'm in a data analyst role.
That's amazing. And where do you work right now?
I work with booking.com.
That's amazing. And what did you take away from the career unblocking mini course? Was there anything particular that you like or you took away from it?
So I really liked the course. It was 4 weeks, but it was really impactful 4 weeks. I really liked how you kind of got us to like think of the impact, speak in the language of the leadership. I think that is something, especially when we are in data, we are very focused, we get super technical, and we don't really think about our stakeholders and bringing these insights to their language so that it can actually be implemented and have that impact. So I think that was for me the biggest takeaway, which I really want to go ahead and implement in my work. Yeah.
I love that. Cool. So, what do you want to talk about today?
Yeah. Like I mentioned a bit in the introduction, I've been in the analytics space for like around 13 years now. And I think at this point, it has become a little repetitive. I do not find it as interesting, challenging. When I started in analytics, I loved it. Like, I was like, oh, wow, this is so cool. It's like art meets science. There's no two problems which are similar. You need to go about it. You need to think about it. You need to understand the business. There was so much of excitement, and I think that really translates then into the quality of the work you do. Whereas now it's become a little bit more, yeah, that we know that's that problem. So then it's like it's gotten into that kind of a mode. When I think about it, I do want to be in a place where I can like maybe be a leader in data within either a corporate sector or in somewhere around that, where I can actually like make decisions around data and how it's used in a big organization. When I was thinking about how I'm like losing interest, there was one way which I was thinking, which is sort of like maybe do I look into growing more like technically? Maybe that's when I can like increase the kind of things I do, which then brings back some more excitement and passion around it. So this was the two kind of like dilemma that I had, which I tried to sum up my questions.
I see. So, what do you enjoy the most about your work today? Like, if you had the most amazing day at work, what did you do?
There are a couple of things maybe. One would be if I like solve this really difficult problem, like it's this thing which is not super obvious. You really have to think about it. Or maybe where like I can really see that someone is really going to be using the work that I did. When you have this conversation with a product person and they're like, oh my God, this is so helpful. I can do this with this. And you see how it's going to impact their life. I think those are the two things which now currently give me joy when that happens.
I love that. And the second point about impact, how often does that happen?
Not often enough is what I would say, yes. Maybe it's also a little bit like the structure of my organization that I'm in, that we have like this prio, you pick up something. So I feel when we have gone to those ticketing based system, we don't have as much connection with the product. And so then it's difficult to be in one sprint to understand everything and provide something which is like super useful to them. So maybe that's why maybe the frequency of it is lesser.
I see. And is that how you work? So stakeholders will open tickets, and
Yes, that's kind of how the organization is set up.
when you accept a ticket and you start working on it, what happens? What typically happens? Do you just start working, or do you have conversations with the
No,
stakeholder?
no, we of course have a kick-off conversation with the stakeholder, and it's not like a execute and then at the end of 4 weeks we have like regular catch-ups so that we know the direction, and then we finally end up with a solution.
I see. I think what's interesting about analytics work is that they give you pieces, a lot of small pieces of the puzzle. Okay. So every ticket like that is just a very small piece of a much bigger puzzle. And I think that sometimes the people who make the requests, because there's so many of them, they may not even see the big picture themselves, right? But if you work on all these tickets, you might start spotting patterns and similarities between them and repeating questions. Or you can say, okay, this question, this question, this question, they all have the same underlying reason people are asking for them. And so I think that if you take a step back right now and you start looking for these patterns, you start asking the broader questions, I think these things will help you, and they can also give you a lot of motivation because now you're solving much bigger problems and you're not focusing on smaller things one at a time. So to give you an example, right? Let's say you work on marketing. So they might ask you, okay, can you analyze the performance of this campaign? And you do it. And then they come and ask you, okay, we did this campaign with influencers. How many of them stuck around for a year after whatever? And then they ask you for a churn analysis on a specific cohort. And if you look at the bigger picture, you might say, okay, what is the problem that we're trying to solve here? We spend money on marketing, we have outcomes, and we want to be able to effectively measure the return on investment of our marketing. So instead of doing it one task at a time, we can take a step back. We can do a more comprehensive analysis of all of the different channels, all of the different budgets that we have and spendings, and break it down and just do one big thing and maybe build a dashboard that you can slice and dice and work with the data engineering to build the mother of all marketing attribution data sets and that sort of stuff. And
Yes.
that's a way of taking a lot of small requests and making a bigger project out of them. And this is actually more exciting, more fulfilling. As you do that, you might become a subject matter expert, right? You need to do a little bit of investigation. You need to start aligning people on metrics. So you're stepping up. You're not just executing on tasks one at a time, but now you're actually solving a business problem.
So for us, even our area is pretty broad. And so then when we pick up different tickets, they can be very different from each other. And so it's difficult to do that. And part of it, yes, I do think it's like back to the motivation. I definitely do see the value in like trying to make it solve the bigger problem underlying it. But sometimes, it's 4 weeks. The practical operations part of all of it comes in the way, and then I give what is required in this scope. Let's say, like the scope creep, I think, is the problem in some of these.
Okay, understood. So let's say in that situation you work on very different areas of the business, right? And it's very
Yeah.
broad. You're not going to become an expert on all of them overnight. But let's say that one of them is more appealing to you. Let's say you're very interested in pricing. Okay. Are you able to pick the ones that are more related to pricing?
Yes, I can influence that. Yeah.
Then you start working with the different stakeholders. You've done a lot of kickoff meetings with them, and you start spotting, okay, these two stakeholders, they talk about pricing in a completely different way. I see a discrepancy here. Can you bring this up with your manager and say, okay, I think that we have different definitions of how we measure cost? Do you think this is something we need to correct? Would they oppose that? Maybe, maybe not. We don't know. We need to try, right? But then let's say they say, okay, Shireen, this is a great idea. Why don't you bring your stakeholders together? So you run a meeting with different stakeholders and you say, okay, I've just spotted you measure the price this way, you measure the cost this way, you measure the cost this way. Let's just talk about it and see if we can come up with a uniform definition. And why do we need a uniform definition? Because it's also more efficient, right? First of all, we create alignment on taxonomy and we can compare apples to apples, but also like we don't need every time we do an analysis to build something that is ad hoc. We can build it once and reuse again and again and again. So it's much more efficient also from analytics perspective. So it makes a lot of sense. So you lead that process, right? And you come up with a document that says this is how we're going to measure cost going forward. You circulate that around, you get some sign-offs from different various people. Once everybody is happy, you can build it So this is how you basically position yourself as a pricing expert in your company. And I'm just
Yeah.
taking pricing as an example. Choose whatever is interesting for you, right? But if something is interesting, I mean, right now, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like the direction is a little bit missing in the sense that you're not directing the work in the way that you want, but you're more reactive to the work that comes to you.
That's exactly, yeah, right. I think that is what is a big friction for me at the moment. Yes.
Yeah. So choosing something that is more interesting and you're more passionate about and finding things you can do about it is, I think, step number one. If you do that, then directionally you are already like not just going anywhere randomly, you're much more directed, even if it's not 100%.
Yeah.
You let's say, you still do 60% pricing and then 40% other things. It's still like 60% doing things that you want, right? You're interested in, that you feel like you can become an expert on. So you start building this expertise. You start becoming like the pricing expert. You start positioning yourself that way. You start talking to everybody in your team about pricing. People will start coming to you. So if somebody else on the team is doing something related to pricing, they would know that you're the expert on that. So this is how you sort of claim the scope, you claim the space by demonstrating your expertise, by doing things to establish yourself. And when you establish yourself, you can start initiating more. You will start seeing more of the patterns. You will know the stakeholders. You will have relationships with them. Maybe with some key stakeholders, you can say, listen, instead of having a random meeting every once in a while when you need something, maybe we should have a weekly meeting and just let me know what are the things you're working on, and I'll tell you how I can help you with this.
No, that's definitely a very good point. I think historically, whenever I used to think of like choosing a direction, I used to think more in terms of like techniques than business areas. But what you said makes a lot of sense in that once you have that area, then you build that knowledge around that area that you can actually be more prescriptive about what you're trying to say, or even like be proactive about, hey, I see these things which are not directly addressed, but like indirectly through these other things are coming up again and again. So let's tackle the nail on its head. Yeah.
Exactly. And when you claim the scope, then you can also start being opinionated about things. So, step number one is sort of claiming the scope. Step number two is understand, let's say that on pricing, what are the top key questions that you have? Is, how sensitive are our customers to pricing? Can we segment them in ways that some are more sensitive, some are less sensitive? How can we identify them? How can we create this segmentation? How do we compare ourselves with our competitors, right? So looking at competitor pricing and building a model that helps us determine the right pricing point to the right property at the right time or whatever. So you start being opinionated about that. This is where, if you remember, on week one of the career unblocking mini course, I talked about the understand, identify, execute framework. This is
Yeah.
exactly how you can become more opinionated about something. So you take a big, broad question like, how do we determine the right pricing point, or how do we compare with our competitors? And you start following the process, and you become an expert on that, and you build a point of view, and then you start propagating this point of view. So you go around the company, you go to the chief pricing officer, whatever, or the VP of pricing, and you say, this is how we should start pricing right now. They listen to you because you've spent a lot of time investigating this problem. You have a strong opinion that is backed up with facts, with information, with all of that. So you're in a position to influence that.
Yeah. Yes, that makes sense. I think yes, like it's getting deeper into a topic, and with that you increase your impact and your influence in that sense, and that then kind of helps you get more and more like that virtuous cycle. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And look, you can become an expert on everything. You can claim any scope. It can be a technology, right? You can become the Python expert of the team or the R expert. You can claim, a platform like I'm going to be the Google Analytics expert, or I'm going to be the experimentation expert, and every experiment design is going to go through me, and I'm going to build a process around experimentation for our company, and I'm going to build a process around doing experiment reviews and define the standard for what a good experiment is, what a bad experiment is. It can be a business area, it can be specific data domain. It doesn't really matter what the scope is. It's your choice. If you're more passionate about technology, like you want to be the pipelines expert of your team and you want to learn Airflow and you want to learn how to work with DBT and whatever tools you use, be that person. But find something that excites you and claim that scope to the extent that you can. It's not going to be 100%, right? But even if 60% of the time you work on something that is directed and controlled by you, and then 40% of the time you work on things that are sort of coming your way and pushed towards you, I think this is already a big improvement from the current state.
No, I totally agree. Yeah, I think it's growing towards that space. It's not going to be like 100% immediately. Yeah. One more thing which comes to my mind, especially when I think about technologies, is how AI is disrupting everything. And I really liked coding and like cracking difficult code. But now I feel investing on that maybe is not the best strategy because you have something that can solve these problems very quickly. Like that will not be your differentiating factor. Do you have some tips around how to think around those? Like, and especially when choosing directions? I do think I want to do more from that analytics, either from like a leadership point of view or like maybe stepping up to machine learning might be a good path, especially in the environment that we are in.
I think when you step into something, it needs to be something that you're passionate about and that plays to your strengths. Okay, so this is what will create a growth path for you. If you feel like this is where your strengths are and you step into that and you start investing more in machine learning, maybe you move to a data science team that builds models and all of that. Well, that's great if you have that opportunity, but if it doesn't play to your strengths, then you're shooting yourself in the foot, right? Because it's actually going to hinder your growth rather than support that. So you need to find something not just because it's a hype. You need to find something that excites you because this is really what you want to do. If that's what you want to do, by all means, go for it. Find the right opportunity. Sometimes it's easier to transition within your current company just because you're kind of established, that you're a known entity, you've got access to the hiring managers in those teams. So maybe right now you're an analyst, but you know who the data science manager for that team is. So you go and speak with them, you build a relationship, and then you tell them that you have experience and you've done that in your masters, and if there's anything that you can do in that space, then you would be more than interested in contributing and supporting. And then whenever a position opens up, you try to make an internal transfer. So you can sort of start directing yourself in that direction. You can also look externally and just apply to data science jobs, but it will be more difficult getting into a new company, moving from an analyst to a data science position, than to do it internally when you can build relationships.
Of course. The point you said about like playing to your strengths, this is something which is very difficult for me because whatever you stick with more, you become better at, right? So I struggle to think about it for myself. Like if you have any ways to think around it, because I always feel like, okay, if this is the way the market is going, if I can invest time in that now, I get better at it and can benefit from the direction the world is taking.
You will get better, right? But for example, if you wanted to be a statistician, right? Um, you can learn anything because you're probably a smart person, but statistics requires a lot of math. It requires a certain type of thinking. It requires operating in a certain way. Not everybody is strong at that, right? I know a lot of people who are really good at arts. They would never be able to be a good statistician. If you want to become a manager, you need to be very good with people. That's because your job is managing people. Your job is managing an organization. Your job is communicating. If you're not a brilliant communicator, yes, of course you can get better. But do you want to pick something that you're not very good at and become okay at it, or do you want to pick something that you're great at and be the world's best?
That makes sense. Yeah.
Everybody have strengths. Everybody have weaknesses. I think it's important to know, what plays to your strengths and double down on that as much as you can. I mean, a lot of people say, "Oh, find your weaknesses and work on them." I think it can happen to some extent, but why not double down on your strengths and the things you're already very good at? You already have strengths. Just use them to your advantage because these are things you have that nobody else does.
That makes sense. Yeah. I think these were the two main things. And third one was maybe like growing. I think your first part kind of really spoke about that, hey, pick an area, grow your expertise on it. With that, you build evidence that shows that you know what you're doing and then speak to the leaders in that area. And that's basically how you can bring about that change.
What level are you right now, if you don't mind me asking?
So I'm a data analyst too, like a mid senior level, I would say. Like, yeah.
What does it take to get to like staff level for you? Do you know?
I think it is working on a more impactful, bigger projects. Also, maybe a lot more focus is given on community. One to reach that level, like you are mentoring people, you are guiding, you are doing community projects within the organization to help other analysts do their job better. I think these are the two major things to.
Here's why I ask this question, right? Because I mentor a lot of people, and sometimes when I mentor freelancers, I also posted about it on LinkedIn. But when I mentor freelancers, sometimes there's a question I like to ask them, which is, let's say, they make 200,000 a year, right, as a freelancer. I ask them, what do you need to do to get to 1 million? And I think it's a super powerful question, right? Because not because all we care about is money, just because I think that to get from 200,000 a year to 250, they just need to do a little bit more of what they already do, right? So just push themselves more, work more hours, find another project, find another client, and they can get there. It's within the achievable range of what they can do. If they want to get to 1 million, it's a step function from where they are. They cannot just do more of what they do today. They need to change something fundamental in the way they work to get there. Maybe hire more people and start an agency. Maybe they need to work on more lucrative projects. Maybe they need to create more leverage, right? So they need to choose, instead of being a generalist who can do any project, choose one type of project and do it again and again and again, and then build yourselves tools and frameworks. So instead of doing it in 5 weeks, you can do it in like 3 days. This is a change from where they are. So at your level, asking you how do you get to level 5 forces you to think about, what do I need to do differently? What do I need to stop doing today? What do I need to start doing? Like some of the things we talked about in the beginning, have a direction, develop expertise in something. Imagine if you work directly with the VP of pricing of booking.com and you're the right hand person helping them think about all the pricing strategies, helping them understand booking's position in the market, and you're directly responsible for improving booking.com's revenue in 10% year over year. I mean, that's huge, right? That would be, staff level analyst, I would guess.
Yeah.
How do you get there? This is very different from, sitting there taking tickets one at a time, one on pricing, one on marketing, one on sales, one on. It forces you to think differently about your work. And one of the things you can do, because sometimes like just seeing an example of that can really open your mind, and maybe you haven't seen enough examples of people operate at that level, but I'm sure there are people level 5 around you in your company that you can talk to, right? Some of them are analysts, but some of them may be product managers or engineering managers or whatever. So if you can get some time with them, just invite them for lunch and speak to an analyst level 5, data science level 5, and try to understand, how do they work? What does their day look like? How do they think? What kind of problems do they work on? When you talk about bigger scope, bigger impact, what does that mean? Like, what does that actually look like in practice? I think that's really going to open your mind to what is possible, right? So now at least okay, I'm here, I can get here. Now the next question is, okay, what do I need to do to get from here to here? What's the path? And that's something you need to figure out. But if you don't ask yourself that question in first place, if you don't ask yourself, how do I get to $1 million a year, and push the boundaries of what's possible, then you don't even know where you need to get to. Like, you don't have a reference point. So you're kind of here wandering in space and trying to do a little bit more of what you already do, but you don't know where you need to get to.
That does really hit home. I must say, I do think I am very much in the loop of like a little bit more impactful projects, more community projects, and that's it. But I've never really tried to, like, if I want to be, yeah, level 5 or something like that, what do I need to do for that? Yeah, because that definitely is going to be a very different perspective of looking at things. Yes. Yeah.
So, and you can ask yourself, okay, let's think about the VP analytics of booking.com. What do they do? What are the problems that they deal with? What do they work on every day? What are the three biggest problems they need to solve for the company? Because if you want to be level 5 or above that, if you want to be director level or VP level or whatever, you need to start solving problems at that level. So what is it?
Yeah. I don't have the clarity of it now. It's something I definitely need to think through, and exactly like you said, where we have those conversations with a couple of different people to also get like ideas and perspectives. I must say another one thing which your course did really push me to do was having those conversations, because I think I'm shy to generally just reach out to someone and like, hey, can we have a coffee catch up? Because they are busy, they have 100 things to do, they probably don't have time, and all of those kind of thinking comes into mind. But I do think there's a lot of value in trying to understand what they are looking towards for being able to better align data for them as well, but also from like understanding where to grow, how to grow as well.
I know a lot of people are shy. This is exactly why I put that in the course and trying to push people to having leadership conversations. And I'm really glad to hear that you're starting to do it, because that was exactly the point, and giving people the tool and the framework to understand how to do that. But I think there's nothing you can lose from doing that. You should ask for the meeting, and the worst case is you will not get it. But
Yeah.
not asking for it guarantees that you will not get it.
True.
I love that.
Yeah, true. Yes. And I also really like the questions that you gave with it. It may not be like the questions you ask, but that really helps also to start thinking around these lines. And then it starts your mind thinking. And then you can add the questions the way you want to. Yeah.
And if you want to get more perspective, let's say, okay, you don't have access to the VP analytics at booking.com. Let's say it's impossible for you right now. And you don't know what they're thinking, right? But let's say a VP analytics at Netflix posts regularly on Substack and LinkedIn, or you can watch a podcast with VP analytics at Meta on YouTube. Just listening to them speak can give you a perspective that you can guess that a VP Analytics at Netflix and VP Analytics at Booking or Airbnb and Booking, they think about similar kinds of problems, right? The level of impact they need to work on is similar. So I think that can also give you a perspective. So finding examples for other people that can give you reference to what you need to get to, I think, is also an interesting comparison point. Of course, like, you're not trying to get to VP level tomorrow morning, but understanding what does it mean? Because I talk to a lot of people and I ask them, what do you need to do to get to next level or 2 levels up or 3 levels up? And they say, oh, we need more impact. And I ask them, okay, what is an example of an impactful enough project? And they have no idea. They really cannot put it into words. They cannot articulate that. And of course, if you don't know, then how will you get there?
True. Yeah. 'Cause finding that joy and passion was something I was struggling with. So in the past, I did try to maybe listen to more podcasts or like listen to more things. Maybe what I was trying to listen to was something which was not really something which is my strength, but something I felt I needed to grow towards. Whereas if you can find that balance of something which does excite you or that you're good at, then you're more likely to enjoy the conversation that you hear as well.
Yeah, and mentoring and coaching and getting external perspective always helps. I mean, I've paid a lot of money to mentors over the years, and I always got 10x returns in less than a year on how much I've spent, because I spent on my own growth, which is the biggest asset I have, right? It's me. I spend and I become better. So it's just no brainer. Of course, I'm going to do it every time I have the option to. So about burnout, when do we feel burned out? And again, I'm not an expert on that. There's a lot of different reasons, but some things that worth keeping in mind is, first of all, when you're not growing or when you don't feel like you're growing and things become repetitive. So finding yourself things you want to learn to get expert on, skills you want to pick up, or topics that you want to dig deeper into, like, okay, you work on marketing. Let's understand the marketing funnel better. Let's understand how they allocate budget. Even just having discovery conversations every once in a while with people who work on marketing and asking them questions about how do you decide where to spend money on, how do you set your budget, how do you build your campaigns. Just learning, I think, can help a lot. So that's number one. The second thing is not feeling in control. In the beginning, when you joined, maybe you worked on random tickets, but everything you're still learning. But then you're not learning anymore because it feels repetitive and you feel like you're not in control. And then you can lose the motivation. So regaining control, I think, is important. And I think that people don't realize that in many cases they have the option to do that, not 100%, but they can regain control over the situation to some extent. And I think it's always a game changer. So not feeling in control. And then you're also a human being, right? Which means that sometimes things happen outside your work, right? Maybe you need to move to a new house and you need to search for a new place and you hate doing that. Or maybe a family member is not feeling very well and you need to look up for them or you're worried about them or something like that. So remembering that we're also, humans and we need to look after ourselves and our environment. So make sure that you take enough time off, that you spend enough time with family, that you spend enough time on your hobbies. And if you don't have hobbies, then picking up one or two things that really bring you joy outside work. It can be, reading, bike riding, watching movies, whatever, but spending enough time every day, in a very selfish way, doing something that you truly enjoy doing just for you, just because, it's fun for you. Also being physically fit. You don't have to be a bodybuilder, but just, making sure that you sleep well, you eat well, you're fit. Sometimes these things make the biggest difference. When my daughters were born and when they were babies, to me, the sleep deprivation was the most difficult thing. Of course, it impacted my work because I was, not sleeping throughout the night and then I had to perform at peak performance throughout the day. It's not going to work, right? Sometimes just adding 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes of physical training to your schedule every day. And I'm sure you can find 5 to 10 minutes every day to do something, right? Even a plank or something. I'm not, not a personal trainer, but small things like that add up and they make a big difference.
Mm. No, yes, I completely agree with you. I do think I did go through a bit of a, is this burnout? Am I? A lot of what you said does definitely resonate deeply with me. Uh, I still don't think I have managed to feel more in control. I'm really trying to get inspiration from this conversation with the course to do that. I also, to your point of like, try to focus on physical activity, physical health. Right now, it's just a walk and a run every other day just to get started so that you do feel more energy. With that energy, you are able to do more things. Yeah.
100%. And that's a really important point, right? Before you take control over your job, take control over your life. So when do you sleep? How much you spend time on hobbies? How much you spend time on physical activities? What do you eat? Like these things you're more in control over than what you work on at work. And sometimes these small rituals can make a big difference.
For sure, for sure. I was also like smiling a bit because I actually did move houses very recently, and that was also very stressful. We had to like get everything, and I think that also impacted like the pressure I was feeling overall and like the energy lessness that I was feeling. I don't naturally think of like, oh yeah, things are happening in life, so maybe then it will be a little okay. Like I do feel, oh no, I need to do it, I need to do it, but of course it's physically sometimes not possible if you have not slept properly, if you're really tired, that you can't show your best self.
100%. And I think this is probably the worst part of all of it. And I posted about burnout recently on LinkedIn, but I think burnout is real. It's not something to be ashamed of. I mean, we operate in a stressful environment. Tech jobs, I mean, we're not coal miners, but it is a very stressful job. It can impact our lives sometimes. And accepting that and giving yourself permission not to be 100% all the time, I think is really important. Recognizing that you're burnt out. I mean, I think that I see a lot of people who are completely burnt out and they don't recognize that. They don't acknowledge that. They're just trying to keep pushing through and through instead of taking a step back and say, I need help. I need to look after myself. I need to make sure I'm fine before I can keep doing this. I see a lot of people, and the more you drag it, the more difficult it will be to recover. So looking after yourself is so important. Giving yourself permission is so important. Not feeling guilt and shame because I mean we're humans. Unlike robots, we have feelings. We are allowed to be sometimes unwell, and this is by design. That's just how we work. It's not that we should aim to be unwell, but we should give ourselves the permission and accept that and live with that. So I think it's super, super important not to go hard on yourself when it happens.
Milku, thank you so much. Yeah, I do think that.
And sometimes the best thing you can do is ask for help, right? I mean, I've experienced burnout throughout my career several times, and talking to my managers helped. I was lucky to have good managers who really cared about me and they wanted to help and they wanted to support me, and just having a conversation with them and saying what I feel, and taking some time off and getting the support that I need, and working together, identifying what is it that will help me, and creating myself a new path will help. And sometimes the truth is you need to introduce change. Sometimes just moving to a new city, moving to a new house, moving to a new company, moving job within your existing company, trying something different can reignite that feeling of, the passion and motivation that is missing.
This is super helpful. Thank you so much, Shahar. Went in directions I did not expect it to, but I think that was what came out. Yeah. Thank you so much for being so candid with me. Yeah.
I appreciate it. So, thanks everyone for joining us today. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you liked it, if you learned anything from this conversation. And thanks, Shireen. It's been, of course, a pleasure speaking with you and getting to know you today.